What's going on YouTube? It's Teej, back again with another video, and today an exciting one as I'm going to be reacting to the Goathouse's latest 2023 NFL mock draft post-combine edition. And hey man, I'm a big fan of the Goathouse, always love his takes, and he's always finding a way to think outside the box. So excited to bring this your way, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. Also, we'll be thinking about doing some more of these where it's not just me reacting to mocks that are on a website, it's also me doing it through video format. So let me know if you like this, and if this video does well, we'll continue to do more and more of these in the future. But let's waste no time, let's jump right into it. And of course, you see the trade. He's got the Panthers moving up to 1, swapping places with Chicago. And you know, this is one that, and I've been doing mocks every weekend, but in the first one, I guess, beginning of January, I did the same thing, and I said, and I've been standing by this, that I think the Panthers make the most sense for a team willing to sell the farm to move up to 1, and they were my, odds-on pick, then with the Colts closely behind them. I just didn't think and didn't know if Chicago was comfortable falling outside the top 4, but with the Jalen Carter news and him falling down boards, I think they're obviously a lot more comfortable doing that. So you'll continue to see this, and it's kind of cool to see Carolina making that move up to 1 a lot more often in mocks versus just always being the Colts. So pretty fun here, and I'm glad to see that, maybe I was right all along. Not that that's the biggest deal here, but where Goathouse is interesting. He has CJ Stroud going 1. A lot of times you'll see these mocks, and it's Carolina moving up to 1, and then it's Bryce Young. But here, a little something different, and I'm pretty sure it's his QB1 on the board, so I respect him sticking behind that. Stroud looked good slinging at the combine, and of course that Georgia game, maybe the best game of his career. What a high note to end his career on. And then here for Carolina, it's pairing up your future franchise quarterback. You get to dictate the draft at 1, pair him up with Frank Reich, and see where that takes you. So love that pick from that standpoint. Go ahead and skip along here to pick number 2, and even the draft haul there before we get to pick 2, I think is fair enough. Moving up from 9 up to 1. Maybe you can get away without giving up the second. It's just 3 1s, but I don't know. I'm no expert there, and it depends on what trade chart you look at. But anyways, at 2, then Houston gets Bryce Young. I think that's kind of the best case scenario for Texans fans. Get that franchise or get this rebuild kind of off the ground. Give them that franchise quarterback, and I think they would take Young if they were picking 1 and had the not 1 week 18. I think Young would be the pick. So getting him at 2, all the sweeter. Then the Eagles moving up to 3, and this is another trade that I've actually talked about, but strictly in just kind of this would be cool if type of situation. I haven't actually done it in a mock draft, so a ton of credit to Goathouse for actually having the nads to do it. So, I mean, pairing up 10 and 30 plus a 3rd round pick to move up to 3. Will Anderson, Philadelphia just made a trade for a speed rusher and Robert Quinn, so why not go get a guy that you could have control over for 4 plus the 5th-year option? And, is the best defensive player in this class, best non-quarterback in this class, when you take into account, off-field issues kind of separating him and Jalen Carter there. So, would love to see the Eagles play this aggressive. And, it's also a win for Arizona because this team needs to stockpile picks because it's a 2-year retool. I think you can still keep Kyler Murray around and create a winning window around him, but it's going to take 2 years to shore up the trenches, continue to make sure you have the weapons, and really fix that defense because trenches, corners, linebacker, there's a lot of question marks on that side of the ball for Arizona. So being able to turn 3 into 10, 30 plus another 3rd round pick, I think it's a big win there for Arizona. And then the Eagles just get to draft. They get the luxury of drafting a player they have no business drafting, considering they were just in the Super Bowl. So that would be awesome from an Eagles standpoint, and a big win there for the Cardinals as well. Okay, now we've made it to the rest of the top 8. So at 4, Anthony Richardson of the Colts. Yet another mock where we see Anthony Richardson come off the board before Will Levis. I've been pretty clear that Will Levis is my QB2, but I understand a lot of people don't like him, and he didn't have the cleanest year last year. The decision-making was a little rough, but I think you have to take into context the situation and the team he's playing with. That being said, we did just see Anthony Richardson become the talk and the man of social media after his combine performance in Indianapolis. So, maybe it's the building. Maybe that was, good enough for the Colts to be like, yep, that's our guy. But it becomes the 3rd quarterback off the board and this, ultimate boomer bust, toolsy prospect. And, unlike Malik Willis last year, this guy has quarterback down to a degree. Now it just needs to make it more and more consistent in which we see it. I think back to the Florida State game, and that first pass he had, uncorking a 60, 65-yard bomb, hitting the dude in stride, touchdown. What a way for the Gators to start offensively. Anthony Richardson, great footwork, took the hit, ball's perfectly placed out in front of the wide receiver, hit him on the run. He does that stuff. Malik Willis really just didn't. It was kind of the flash, and he's a great runner, he's a good athlete, yada, yada, yada. He has a strong arm. Richardson is much more further along the line of being able to be a quarterback. Now it just comes down to this guy needs reps. He needs to be able to do that consistently. He needs to be the same snap in and snap out. So pairing him up with Shane Steichen, That's awesome. And I think that's a guy who could kind of unlock that at Richardson and take him into toolsy. Sometimes he does it, sometimes he does it, into a guy who just becomes a freak at the NFL level. And he calls himself, Cam Jackson, a combination of Cam Newton and Lamar Jackson. That's awesome. And hey, maybe Steichen is the guy to get him to that level of potential. Tyree Wilson then at 5 to Seattle. I think this makes a lot of sense. It's one that we see pretty much in every mock now. He's just the edge rusher they don't have. Add that type of length, a 6'6", almost 280-pound frame, in addition to Uchenna Nwosu, Boye, who are a little bit lighter from the edge spot. Plus that inside-out versatility I think is key. Helps you stop the run right away, but also a lot of pass rush upside to be able to tap into. So Wilson makes a lot of sense there to Seattle. Jalen Carter then at 6. And, you'll see my mock this upcoming weekend. I still think Carter's going to go 6 to 10, and we just did the reaction to McShay where he went to 12. I still think, Philadelphia at 10, they're going to take that shot, assuming they hold on to that pick here. Different situation playing out in Goathouse's latest mock. But nonetheless, the situation really gets interesting at 5 and 6 because you're talking about Seattle, who made the playoffs last year, and the Lions, who went 9 and 8 and were the first team out because Seattle won Week 18. Those are two teams that could obviously benefit from a talent like Jalen Carter. And basically leading up to the last 2 weeks, every Seahawks and Lions fan are just dreaming of a way where Jalen Carter makes it a 5, makes it a 6 respectively. And I think they'll have that decision. I think he lasts no longer than 10, but 5 and 6. I still think he's going to probably go somewhere in there because these two teams, I think they both have good cultures too, which I think kind of goes a long way to trying to ease maybe some of the trepidation that teams will have about drafting a Jalen Carter. So leaning in Pete Carroll as a great players coach, leaning on to Dan Campbell as a great, leader of men and a players coach. I think that kind of, again, eases that, uneasiness someone might have. And I think those are two teams that are fighting for playoff spots again this year. So adding a Jalen Carter to a defense that both those teams' defense need a Jalen Carter, I think it makes a lot of sense. So here's the Lions kind of benefiting from that. And of course, you just have to hope that you can work on that maturity and some of the stuff that teams have already had concerns about the 2 misdemeanors being charged to Carter. But nonetheless, you add this type of guy to that defense right alongside, Aiden Hutchinson, and I think you keep Aleem McNeil then at nose. That D-line gets really scary really quick. And this is a deep corner class. So getting Carter at 6 and then going corner at 18, man, that's the way to play this board. And it just comes down to how comfortable you are drafting Jalen Carter in the top 6, really. Then Christian Gonzalez at 7. The Raiders desperately need cornerback reinforcements, to say the least. This could be Will Levis. I'd be interested to hear the soundbite from the Goathouse and where he stands on Rodgers, but it sounds like Rodgers is going to New York. So at the time of this recording, that's just talks, but it does feel more and more likely. So Will Levis is kind of staring me in the face there, but if they get Rodgers, then absolutely go Christian Gonzalez. Give Patrick Graham a legitimate number 1 corner, a guy who can play man and zone, and Gonzalez makes for a really fun fit because Patrick Graham wants to vary that defense. He wants to have a good mix between, single high zone, single high man, 2 high man, and those 2 high zone shells between cover 2, cover 4. He mixes it up at a pretty even distribution. So adding a guy like Christian Gonzalez, who I think can do all of that, would be such a win for the Raiders. So would love that pick. And then Will Levis is the pick to the Atlanta Falcons at 8. And, seeing this video, it made me wish that I had ended up doing it short. I kind of kicked it around, but then I decided not to publish it just because, I guess I got lazy and, I have a full-time job on top of this, so ran out of time, I guess. But I think the Falcons should be in the quarterback market. Basically, my thinking is if you're Arthur Smith, you could say, well, we'll see what Desmond Ritter's all about. And if he's bad, we're picking at the top of the board in 2024. We'll be looking at Caleb Williams. We're looking at Drake May, Quinn Ewers maybe. But if you're picking the top 5 in 2024, does Arthur Smith have his job? I have a hard time saying yes to that question. Or Ritter's fine enough and they work themselves into no man's land and they just become buddies with Washington. And, these teams that are always okay enough, but not bad enough to go make an actual impact and an actual change at quarterback. So I don't know. I feel like the Falcons should be in the quarterback market this year, and that was basically going to be the thesis of that short / TikTok. But here, getting Levis falling to their lap at 8, man, I would love to see what that is all about, and I'd love to see that type of big arm. I think you need to add a speed wide receiver to fully maximize it. But what would Kyle Pitts look like with, no disrespect to Marcus Mariota and end of his career Matt Ryan and Desmond Ridder, but a legitimate first-round quarterback? Like a guy who has all that talent still readily available. What does that mean for Drake London? How good could he look? I'm really fascinated. And then plus, he'd be going to an offense where that run game is fantastic and play action off that with Will Levis's arm strength. Oh, man, that sounds like some fun to me. So Really intrigued by that pick, and he feels like he's going to go 7, 8, or 9. The fourth quarterback's going to go 7, 8, or 9 between, 7 being the Raiders, 8 being the Falcons, and then 9, of course, being Carolina normally. But in this case, of course, we do have the trade. Paris Johnson Jr. to the Bears. What a win. You move back 8 spots. You get this first-round pick, another first-rounder the next 2 years, and a third-rounder on top of it, plus the best offensive tackle in this class. Can I spell out a bigger win for Chicago? Yeah, that's a big time upgrade. Wonder what they would do with Braxton Jones if they did draft Paris Johnson Jr. Do they feel comfortable being able to move him over to right tackle? Would it be a battle between him and Borum? Nevertheless, offensive line is one of the major issues the Bears need to address. Giving the best offensive tackle in this class, that's one way to do it. And then here for the Arizona, moving back from 3 to 10, and they still get an awesome impact defensive player. Yeah, it's not Will Anderson, but Nolan Smith, 4.39, 40 plus inch vertical, The broad was great, team captain of Georgia. There's a lot to like about Nolan Smith, and getting him right there at 10. Yeah, again, it's not Will Anderson, but this is a guy who could develop into and be the leader of your defense on top of his potential. Already a really good run defender, which the Cardinals could stand to benefit from, but really it's about tapping into his upside as a pass rusher. And we just saw Jonathan Gannon come from Philadelphia, where Hassan Reddick kind of feels like a decent comp there for Nolan Smith. Just, kind of tear it up at certain points of the year, and then including in that postseason run. Could Nolan Smith be Jonathan Gannon's, Hassan Reddick? I think that fit kind of makes a lot of sense. Peter Skoronski, then the Titans. I've said him and Broderick Jones both kind of feel like Tennessee Titans. Jones kind of fits that, we're gonna throw people into the dirt, and we're gonna be maulers. We're gonna dominate in the run game. He kind of fits that. But Peter Skoronski kind of fits the Mike Vrabel of I don't care that you have 32.25 inch arms. I care about results. Peter Skoronski has great results. Give me that guy. So I can totally see this playing out. But also, as Goathouse has noted here, maybe this is at guard. There could be a world where Tennessee signs Andre Dillard and then puts Peter Skoronski right next to him at left guard. I'd be entertained by that, and that could be just doubling down on our identity. We're gonna have a great offensive line. We're gonna run the ball well, but also for Ryan Tannehill, it's hey, you had an awesome pass blocking left tackle that's now playing left guard, and we made an investment at left tackle to replace LeJuan. Let's see it. You gotta have a big year. Investment in Ryan Tannehill, could go a long way to maximizing that offense as well. So it's cool that he put the guard note there, because this does kind of paint the picture that he's assuming that Tennessee is going to use him at left guard versus left tackle, which is a little different. And I've had Skoronski go to the Titans, but I've always kind of pictured it at left tackle. So a little bit different there. And then we get Jackson Smith-Njigba to the Houston Texans. So I wonder what this would mean for John Mechie III, who I figure is going to be slot only. But nonetheless, this team needs a volume wide receiver. Jackson Smith-Njigba, I think, could totally do that at 12. And actually, the mock I have coming up this weekend, I really thought about JSN at 12. But I decided to go somewhere else. So leaving enough vague there to where you'll have to come back and check out that video this upcoming Friday. But yeah, I would like this pick. They're going to be moving on from Brandon Cooks, so wide receiver is definitely a huge question mark. And I think, if they value JSN as the number 1 wide receiver, he's my wide receiver 4, just because I think he's slot only at the next level. 3 guys ahead of him have inside-out versatility. So I do covet that at a pretty high clip. But JSN, if he's the Texans' number 1 guy, this is the way to rebuild an offense. You get a QB at 2, and then you give him a number 1 wide receiver, the guy that can carry the load offensively, and Jackson Smith-Njigba at 12. That's how you turn this team around. Broderick Jones then at 13. Yep, Jets need a tackle. We're seeing this more and more often. It just comes down to, is it Paris Johnson Jr., is it Skoronski, is it Broderick Jones? Makes a lot of sense. And, in a perfect world, you have Broderick Jones and Mekhi Becton forming this awesome athletic tackle duo moving forward. But at the worst, you move it on from Fant, Brown, and Becton, and then it's Jones plus Mitchell, and then you're figuring out who that swing guy is, or who is going to be starting, and Mitchell becomes the swing guy. So this is kind of that step in the right direction for the Jets. And then Deonte Banks, second corner off the board, but nonetheless, interesting. And man, if Bill Belichick wants to roll it back to being like a man press focused defense, Deonte Banks is a really interesting fit. It's interesting on top of that because this guy is taken off the board before Devon Witherspoon, who a lot of people, if you were to ask, hey, who's the most NFL-ready man press corner right now? A lot of people would tell you Devon Witherspoon. But Witherspoon, sub 6 foot, right around 180 pounds, versus Deonte Banks over that 6 foot mark, 200 pounds. He was one of these corners that didn't all of a sudden shrink at the combine. And you see it on tape. You see the flashes of being an unbelievable man coverage type of corner. The 4.35 40 certainly helped. And he's almost always at the catch point. So work on the ball skills, turning those, being at the catch point into PBUs and interceptions. That's kind of the last, thing that Banks needs to try to conquer. Easier said than done for sure. But nonetheless, again, if Bill Belichick wants to become this man coverage heavy team, Banks over Witherspoon. That's a really interesting one, and I really respect Goathouse for making that happen. And then we get to Lucas Van Ness, the Packers. I've kind of said time and time again, I don't think he gets past 15 at Green Bay, especially with Nolan Smith climbing up boards. Like, Smith might be gone before Green Bay, so Smith, Van Ness, I think are kind of the Packers picks that I'm kind of keying in on and have been for the last few weeks in previous mocks. So makes a lot of sense. A guy who can play on the inside, can play on the outside, so he could be a Preston Smith replacement long term, but also he can get on the field now while you have Gary and Smith. You know, he can be kind of a sub-in for Jaron Reed or, you know, Dean Lowry. So I think it makes a lot of sense there for the Packers. And as much as we want to see them go pass catcher here in the first, it's just probably not going to happen. So then we get to Devon Witherspoon at pick 16. To me, the most NFL ready guy. Like, if I have a game tomorrow, which corner do I think stands the best? It's probably Devon Witherspoon. And the Commanders certainly need a top-flight shutdown corner, and I think he does make for a good fit in that Jack Del Rio, single high, heavy defense, man and zone, or cover 3 in specific being the zone that they run a lot of. So I think Witherspoon profiles pretty well there. Would love to see his athletic numbers, which he could have tested it at Indy, but nonetheless, we'll have to wait for the pro day. But I think he'll be an okay tester, right? He kind of underwhelmed with the size, so I think a lot of emphasis is going to be put on having a good workout, right? So I think he'll post some pretty good numbers there once we get to Illinois' pro day. But again, addressing a need for Washington. Messed up my screen there, but nonetheless, makes a lot of sense for the Commanders. Good value there at 16. A lot of mocks, you'll see Witherspoon is off the board. Now I have to fast forward a ton, try to get to the next screen. There we go. And we get to DeJuan Jones to Pittsburgh. All right. I don't hate it from the standpoint of, like, Pittsburgh needs offensive line. But I have Anton Harrison ranked higher. I have Darnell Wright ranked higher. So if we're going to go right tackle, I'd go Darnell Wright. If we're going to go tackle, I'd go Anton Harrison. You could go Cyrus Torrance at guard. So, Jones isn't the first guy I'd pull out of my hat, but you get an upgraded right tackle, and then this would probably send Pittsburgh down a route where they move Chukwuma Okorafor over to left tackle where he played in college. And maybe that's your upgrade over Dan Moore. So I don't hate it. And, DeJuan Jones, it seems like Mike Tomlin's playing a pretty keen eye on this offensive tackle group. And I could see a world where Mike Tomlin's like, I want that 6'8", 370-pound monster with long arms on my offense. I've said multiple times, he feels like a guy who would benefit from having a mobile quarterback. And while Kenny Pickett is not Justin Fields, he's not Lamar Jackson, he can move. So there might be enough there to kind of negate the weaknesses that Jones has in his games. In a perfect world, he's in an offense where you can't really rush the quarterback traditionally. You have to basically play contain. I don't think you have to do that against Pickett, but he is elusive enough, and he has some sneaky speed to where, that might be enough to kind of fight off, again, those weaknesses that Jones has in his game. So I think there's other tackles you could go with here, but nonetheless, I respect Goathouse and him playing his board, and I can totally see this being a Steelers type of guy, even with me having other guys ranked ahead of him. Myles Murphy then at 18 of the Lions. I mean, what an awesome, draft. I thought he would go corner here for Detroit after going Jalen Carter at 6, but Carter and Murphy, go back 3 weeks, 2 guys that we had pretty much always coming off in the top 6. You can go even further back than just 2 weeks, but you don't have to go back far before you're finding Myles Murphy, Jalen Carter, both going top 5, top 6, top 10 at the worst. So, yeah, really good value here. Yeah, a bit of a work in progress, but, get him there on the inside. He can also kick outside just in case the James Houston, flash last year was just, a flash in the pan. So I like to see that prioritization on the defensive line. Ideally D-line corner is the route I would take here, but doubling up on D-line, I mean, that's one way to make that secondary look better. So, and also we don't know what's going to happen in free agency. Maybe they go veteran, heavy at the cornerback position. So I can see that playing out as well. Then we get to the Buccaneers. Bijan Robinson. Yeah, I mean, they've said, they want to, recommit to the run game. So if that's the case, Bijan makes a lot of sense, and it's always hard to find where Robinson's going to go in mock drafts. We just did the McShay reaction yesterday. He didn't have Bijan in the first round. I'm a little hard-pressed to think that he doesn't go top 31, but possible, I suppose. But, 19 there to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, just an easy place to slot him in these mock drafts. Then at 20, Brian Brzee. Yeah, I'd like to see this as well. This little bit of a project, but high-level run defender. You pair him up with Tyree Wilson, it feels like the Seahawks run defense gets better pretty drastically just from the first round of this mock draft. But also upside, considering he's 6'5", 300-plus pounds, and looked really good as an athlete. Showcased good movement skills on Thursday at the Combine. So still a lot to be tapped into when it comes to his potential. So right now, him and Wilson give you an upgrade in the run defense game, but also 2 worthy projects as pass rushers too. So I think it's addressing a need now for Seattle, but also addressing a long-term need that I have with Seattle. Dolphins forfeit their pick. Then we get Michael Mayer going to the Chargers. I don't think I've done this in any mocks, but I've seen it enough to where it's like, yeah, I understand it. It'd probably be like, at worst, a B minus. I don't think I'd grade it any harsher than that. I'd rather see them just go wide receiver versus a tight end here. But, Mayer, a lot of people are, calling him a loser, but running the same 40 times TJ Hawkinson. I think he's a better blocker than Hawkinson. And also we've seen him move out from out wide to the slot to in line at tight end. So I think he brings a little bit more versatility than what we saw to Hawkinson at Iowa. So I don't think he's a, total, disappointment coming out of Indy. Sure, would we have loved to see, a 4.6 time be right there with Darnell Washington? Yeah, sure. Of course we would have. And he was also a little bit lighter than I anticipated. So that's a little disappointing, right around that 250-pound mark. But nonetheless, I still think he's going first round. I'm not someone who's going to move him into the second just because maybe not the most ideal combine. And I think it does make sense from a degree for the Chargers to take him here. I just prefer to see wide receiver be the pick. Then Joey Porter Jr. going to the Ravens. I think he goes higher than this. He's probably right now my corner 2. Him and Witherspoon go back and forth between 2 and 3. Those guys in those spots. But Joey Porter Jr. to the Baltimore Ravens would be an awesome fit. Pairing him up with Marlon Humphrey, having these two long-armed, tall corners, and Joey Porter Jr. 34-inch arms at 6'2.5", 4.45 speed. That's a first-round corner in my books, and it pretty much has been this whole cycle. So, addressing an area of need. And Ravens, I've been pretty focused on wide receiver, but corner is also a pretty big area of need. So we'll have to get through free agency and see how they address those two spots. But I could see them going corner here and then maybe adding wide receiver later on. I don't think it's that crazy. Brian Branch then to the Vikings. Think this makes some sense. They just cut Eric Kendricks. So getting a sure tackler where you lose a linebacker, yeah, Branch is from a different position, but a guy who can help in the run defense game and is a sure tackler certainly goes a long way. Also, really good coverage slot guy, man zone. I think he can do either one. So that's a big reinforcement. And it's a different way of addressing corner where the Vikings need to get better, but while also still having faith in Andrew Booth Jr., early second-round pick last year, and Cam Dantzler, a guy who's certainly had flashes at multiple points in his career. So saying, hey, those two guys are good enough. We're going to address the slot with Brian Branch. And then, again, I think him as, as someone who can blitz and stop the run at a high level. That's something the Vikings are looking for right here, right now. And also, we're talking about Brian Flores. Have we seen what he did with Javon Holland? Of course, he wasn't there last year and has moved on from being the Dolphins head coach twice to DC in Minnesota. But we saw him do a lot of good stuff with Javon Holland. Could Brian Branch be that for him? I think it's a fun idea to think about. So not one that I put in any of my mocks, but nonetheless, don't think it's crazy by any stretch. So on to the next now, and the Goathouse is making you a very happy man here. Julius Brent, I saw a lot of people saying he's a combine winner, but they didn't want to put him in the first round. They were like, all right, he's going to go somewhere in the second. And I'm like, what? This guy's 6'3", runs a 6'6" 3-cone, and 34-inch arms. 4.5 is plenty of speed with someone that big. He's playing in a zone-heavy defense. He's played in a defense at K-State where it's a little bit of a mix of both man and zone. How is this guy not going first round? Now, granted, I think the Jags are fine on the outside, if I'm honest with you. I think Darius Williams is a better boundary corner than he is a nickel guy. So I'd rather see them go. If Brian Branch makes it this far, it's awesome. Antonio Johnson maybe to fill that, slot corner, strong safety hybrid role, or just safety straight up replace Rashawn Jenkins. Offensive line certainly could be live. So as much as I'm excited to see Julius Brent in the first round, maybe a different landing spot makes a little bit more sense to me. But I could also see the Jags saying, hey, we got Shaq Griffin, we need an outside corner. I just think Darius Williams proved that he's good enough on the outside that they're going to look elsewhere. But love seeing Julius Brent here in the first round. Jalen Hyatt then to the Giants. I think this makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, while Daniel Jones has been the quarterback, the Giants, not all Dable's fault because obviously he's coming off his first year, but they just haven't been able to maximize guys like Darius Slayton, those deep threats. So let's try it all over again and give Dable his guy, give Mike Kafka their guy, and Jalen Hyatt. Not quite the 4.2 speed a lot of people are expecting, but nonetheless, the guy flies. Ask Alabama's defense how that 4.4 speed looked like because they had a hard time handling it, right? So limited route tree and, comes from a weirder offense. So I think part of the reason the route tree is limited is because Josh Heupel saying, hey, Jalen Hyatt, this is what I'm going to ask you to do. This is all I need you to do, and our offense will still be good. So do that and do it well. So I don't think it's from a lack of not being able to. I just don't think he was asked to do more. So also a really good guy with the ball in his hands, hard to bring down. Again, the speed fully on display there, and he's twitchy. He's a good agile athlete as well. So could do a lot of different things for the Giants. He can kind of fill that, Kadarius Toney, bring him down because he's hard to tackle type of role, but also, of course, that over-the-top speed I think is something the Giants could really stand to add. Dalton Kincaid then in the Cowboys, a couple mocks in a row now we've seen that. Makes sense as a Dalton Schultz replacement. I just rather see them go elsewhere. Off-ball linebacker, offensive line, wide receiver straight up. Like if Hyatt were here, that'd be awesome. But, Tank Dell's here, and I like him a ton. Zay Flowers, I don't remember coming off the board. So, and he did not. So getting a little ahead of ourselves here. But nonetheless, I think that does make sense to a degree, so don't hate Kincaid. Osiris Torrance, this would be an absolute win for the Bills. This would be them addressing a huge area of need. Sorry, I guess I'm not hitting pause. But nonetheless, getting Osiris Torrance, that would be what Ryder Saffold was supposed to be in the Bills' offensive line. So big win there. Darnell Wright makes a ton of sense. This is your Lyle Collins replacement. So love that pick as well, and one that I made myself. Jahmyr Gibbs to the Saints. I've heard people compare Jahmyr Gibbs to like a B-plus version of Alvin Kamara. So that's kind of interesting to see him go to the team that Alvin Kamara plays on. I'd rather see them go elsewhere, but running back, I think we could see a world where there's 2 running backs in the first round. Maybe it's Bijan at 19, and maybe it's Jahmyr Gibbs being a Joe Mixon replacement to the Bengals at 28. Not as crazy about it at 29 to the Saints, just because I think they can address other areas, but I don't think it's crazy to see 2 running backs go in the first round. Then Keely Ringo at 30. This pick comes from the Eagles, so the Cardinals have turned pick 3 into Nolan Smith and Keely Ringo instead of Will Anderson. And like, Will Anderson's a free, he's a blue chipper. But 2 legitimate, fundamental cornerstone pieces you can build that defense around. One on the D-line, one on the secondary. I think you'd be crazy not to want to do that if you're a Cardinals fan. As much as Will Anderson is an animal, I'd rather have those 2 guys versus the one. So love how this draft has kind of played out for the Cardinals. And then Zay Flowers does eventually come off the board to the Kansas City Chiefs. Feels like, kind of Sky Moore 2.0. So not crazy about it from that standpoint. But adding more receiver talent to a team that's going to be losing Mecole Hardman, likely losing Juju Smith-Schuster, I think it makes a lot of sense. So then you have a wide receiver room that you have. Kadarius Toney, Marcus Valdes-Scantling, Sky Moore, and Zay Flowers. Okay, cool. They can certainly do a lot of damage with that crew. Okay, now we're going to move forward intentionally this time. First pick of the second round, Jordan Addison. Yeah, I don't think the 4.49 and the back strains are going to keep him out of the first round, but if it does, pair him up with Kenny Pickett. Are you kidding me? That'd be awesome. And anytime Pittsburgh takes a receiver on round 2, or round 3, just day 2 in general, everyone should be listening because that guy's going to turn into a freak. And especially when I think that guy should be a first-round guy like Jordan Addison. So would love to see it as a Steelers fan. I just think he's off the board by that point. Adetomiwa Adebawore to the Houston Texans. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Trying to find that foundational guy to lead the defense, be the anchor of the defensive line moving forward. And man, he looked good at the Senior Bowl. He looked good at the Combine. We talked about that 4.49 40 yesterday. That's 280 pounds. That is just absolutely banana land. Long arms too, almost 34 inches. Yeah, there's a lot you can do with this guy. Played a lot on the interior for Northwestern, so I think he has that flexibility, but he's going to gravitate further towards the edge at the NFL level. John Michael Schmitz, yeah, this makes a ton of sense, especially after Rodney Hudson retires. Then you have Justin Pugh, Will Hernandez, Billy Price, all these guys on the interior offensive line hitting free agency. So as much as I'd love to see John Michael Schmitz make his way to Seattle, I just don't think it's going to end up happening. And then we get Will McDonald next to the Indianapolis Colts. Would love to see them address edge here. And they've been looking for that answer. And, Kwity Paye, been a pretty good run defender, but still haven't seen him take that step forward in the pass rush department. So continue to address that area of need. And I think 35 is kind of a sweet spot in this draft to get a guy like Will McDonald, Keon White, someone in that range. Derek Hall maybe as well. Hendon Hooker then to the Rams. Interesting. Well, you're hearing Baker Mayfield might go back to the Rams, but it also got suiting interest from San Francisco per Jordan Schultz. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But yeah, quarterback here, especially if they lose out on Baker, I don't think is out of the realm of possibility. And it feels like the Rams are going full blow up now. Like they're moving on from Leonard Floyd. It feels more likely that they're going to move on from Jalen Ramsey. They've already parted ways with Bobby Wagner. Yeah, I mean, we're getting to that point where it feels like the Rams are like, hey, we got a Super Bowl. Let's just go ahead and blow this whole thing up. And they do. Quarterback here at 36 may not be something that everyone's talking about right now, but it's not out of the realm of possibilities. Then Trenton Simpson at 37 to the Seahawks. Like this pick a ton. Getting a raging linebacker type that can play sideline to sideline. I've been saying this pretty much the whole draft cycle. He is a linebacker body, but with a safety skill set, plays the run at a high level, really good in coverage as well. This linebacker group is kind of interesting. I think the sweet spot for him, Sanders and Diane Henley included, that 25 to 50 range, and then Jack Campbell as well, especially after running a pretty good 40 at the Combine. I think those 4 guys, that 25, call it 60 range, if we're going to put all 4, I think that's kind of the sweet spot for their value. So really love that pick there for Seattle. Kalijah Kancey, if he doesn't go in the first round, I'll be floored, but man, oh my God, get this type of pass rusher into a Raiders defensive line that desperately needs it. That type of get off with Max Crosby and hopefully Chandler Jones kind of figuring it out again. I've been looking for the Raiders to add that interior presence. And Kalijah Kancey might not be doing much in the way of run defense, but that type of pass rush would certainly bolster that defense a ton. And then we get back to the Bears. They went Offensive line at 9, Paris Johnson Jr. Love that pick, and now they get Keon White, a guy who could certainly go in the first round and could be that building block there on the outside, at that edge position of that defense. 6'5", right around 280 pounds, tight end converted to play edge. Freaky athlete, pretty good build, and guy who's just still figuring it out. Moved to edge a handful of years ago, not even a full handful, like 4 years ago, made that move from tight end to edge, and goes from a small school at ODU to makes the jump up to Georgia Tech. Maybe not a premier ACC school, but a jump in competition nonetheless. So to see him be able to do that makes me feel that much more confident he'll be able to do the same thing at the NFL level. Okay, next screen now. Let's talk about pick number 40. And that is the New Orleans Saints taking Darnell Washington. I would really like it. We haven't seen the Saints have a dominant tight end in quite some time, so would love it from that standpoint. Also an awesome blocker. So you took Jahmyr Gibbs at 29, paired him up with Alvin Kamara. Certainly better to be able to run block well, and I think Darnell Washington helps you out there, so don't hate it whatsoever. Quentin Johnston, wide receiver from TCU, falls all the way to the second round. I'm not so sure about that because he's my wide receiver 1, but what an awesome fit. I've had Quentin Johnston go 11 to the Tennessee Titans, so to give them their offensive tackle and Quentin Johnston, that's a win of all wins there for the Titans. Drew Sanders to the Browns. I don't necessarily know if he's the linebacker they're looking for, unless they're thinking about maybe using him more just strictly as an edge rusher. Then I'm listening. But yeah, that middle, that Browns defense has been putrid. So I'd love to see Keanu Benton here get that run defense support, or maybe a linebacker. Like if Simpson's here, you can think about it. Drew Sanders, much more, like the biggest thing he brings day one is that blitzing ability. And, the Browns need pass rush, but I just think there's other ways of trying to find that. We'll have to see how free agency plays out, but I'd rather see them go elsewhere than Drew Sanders. Dian Henley coming off a really good combine as well. He's PFF's off-ball linebacker 1, so there are certainly guys who love Dian Henley. Played 6 years of college football, made the jump from Nevada to Washington State, and feels like a perfect fit for Robert Saleh in that defense. Is this insane, great coverage player, and could give Robert Saleh his version of Fred Warner. Now, not to say, Trenton Simpson or, Dian Henley or any of these linebackers are going to be Fred Warner, because that is a tough bill for any of these guys to live up to. But Dian Henley, with his coverage ability, he'll get blocked out of plays because he's only like 6'2", 230, but God, his coverage ability and his range is special. And like I said, especially in a zone-heavy defense, that goes a long way bolstering that side of the ball. Felix Enudike-Ozama then goes to Atlanta, weighed in pretty well, right around 255 pounds, 6'3". He's got enough blend of power and speed. I think he's got a really good get-off, and he does go to that power enough to where it's like, okay, yeah. He's not just like Bijo Jalari, wins with speed and finesse. That's a point of differentiating between those two guys who I both like. So adding that type of edge rusher after we went quarterback in the first round for the Falcons, I think this is the time to address it. If you're not going to do it in the first, you got to do it here at 44. So glad that he got it in for the Falcons. Sam Laporta then to the Packers. Yeah, if they're going to go tight end, I do think it's going to end up being on day 2 somewhere. And Laporta ran a better 40 than a lot of people were expecting. Showcased really good athleticism, looked good in the drills, and I can see him shooting up boards because of it. And he does kind of feel like a future Green Bay Packer in the making in a lot of ways. Maybe it's just because he played at Iowa, and for whatever reason, I'm just associating the Mid-Northwest with teams that play in the Mid-Northwest. But anyways, then Anton Harrison, the Patriots. This would be an absolute dream. New England needs an offensive tackle, and to have a guy who's my OT3 fall all the way down to 46 feels a little too good to be true. I don't think it plays out like this, but hey, it's how the board played out for the Goathouse. And man, this would be a huge win for the Patriots, who, Isaiah Wynn's a free agent, but also you're probably cutting Trent Brown to save some money. So you could have 2 tackle spots up for grabs. Then we get Steve Avila. This would be an awesome pick here for Washington, finding that upgrade on the interior offensive line. Yeah, they'd probably rather see someone who's like a, mauler. I feel like Ron Rivera, like when he says we want to be a 2-to-1 run to pass ratio team, he's like one of those guys where it's like, that's coach speak, but like realistic coach speak for you, because just defensive coach, he's been doing it for a while, and he's always kind of had that MO, wanting to be able to run the ball at a high level. So I respect his, ideologies, and I respect his belief there. I think you need to pass a little bit better. And I think Steve Avila is one of the best pass-protecting interior offensive linemen in this class. So big win there. Comes with guard center flexibility, which certainly goes a long way for Washington as well. Then we get back to Detroit, and Cam Smith falls all the way out of the first round. I still think he's going to go somewhere there in the top 31. If he lasts beyond that, I don't think he gets out to the top 40. But what a win this would be for Detroit. Double up in defensive line in the first round, and then get Cam Smith at, the back 40s. That's a huge win. Had a pretty good combine too, low 4.4 speed, solid size, didn't shrink a ton. So yeah, I think Cam Smith actually had a pretty good combine, and I don't think he's on the board here. But if he is, huge win there for Detroit. Antonio Johnson, would love to see this as like a Terrell Edmonds replacement in Pittsburgh. It's one of the needs that I would really like. Not a lot of other Steelers fans, I think, are looking for a safety, but I would certainly like it. Also sounds like DeMonte KZ is going to come back, so maybe that, again, serves as enough motivation for Steelers fans not to like this pick, but I would love it. I think Antonio Johnson is in that first round conversation, so to give him here at 49 is a big win. Luke Musgrave then to the Buccaneers. It depends on how they feel about Kate Otten, but adding another tight end certainly wouldn't be the craziest thing, but that would mean the first two picks, both being in the top 50 for Tampa Bay, are running back and tight end. I'd rather see them go elsewhere. You got to add an edge. You got to add a corner somewhere in there. So, yeah, not crazy about it from that perspective. And then we get Darius Rush going to the Miami Dolphins. Big-time rise for Darius Rush, but hey, had longer arms than Cam Smith, had a couple more interceptions too, so the ball production's there at South Carolina, but pretty good combine, and I could see him making this type of push up the board. I'm still thinking of him as like a round 3 corner, but second, I don't rule it out. And like that arm length and the ball production fits pretty well in a zone-heavy Vic Fangio defense, so don't hate the fit whatsoever. Seattle then takes Cody Mauch, addressing that interior offensive line. Especially with John Michael Schmitz off the board, you had to go somewhere else at 37. So I like Mauch there at 52. Focusing him probably then at guard, and good movement skills, looked good going through the drills, and had a pretty good 40, just over 5 seconds at Indy. So I think he kind of fits that zone blocking scheme, would make for a really fun fit. And plus, just like, looks like a hockey player, looking to put people into the dirt. Feels like it could go a long way boosting that run game that much more. Mozzie Smith then to Chicago, freaky athlete. Wish we could have seen him at the combine, but decided not to test. But still 6'3", right around 340 pounds. Bruce Feldman's #1 guy on his freak list preseason. So really fun addition here. And, the Bears are kind of feeling the loss of Akeem Hicks last year, where a really bad run defense. So go ahead and address it here with Mozzie Smith. I think that makes a good amount of sense. And then the Chargers, we went tight end in the first round. So now we're going to find that slot replacement. If Keenan Allen is replaced, I think you're looking to address it. And Josh Downs could certainly be that guy. Great yards after the catch guy. And a 4.48, I think, is a good 40 time for him. Plus the 38-inch vertical showcases the explosiveness. Really good underneath route runner. And I think once you get deeper and down the field, maybe it's not sharp routes, but he can run those crossers and get away from guys just because he is really quick, and he has enough long speed to get away from DBs and certainly, linebackers if you get caught in the wrong coverage, right? So, like that fit a fair amount. It kind of feels like DeAndre Carter a little bit better, so maybe a different wide receiver would be my preference here, but don't hate it whatsoever. And then Jack Campbell going to the Detroit Lions. Yeah, here at 55, this makes a ton of sense, especially posting a 4.65. That's a pretty good 40 for him, and it's above average for most inside linebackers. So anything above average was going to be a huge win for Jack Campbell, who this whole cycle, basically, people have been calling him like this unathletic white dude who plays linebacker, and feels like Zach Thomas 2.0. I've said that a handful of times, and drop him into 2004, he will thrive. But here, after posting a good combine, I think he's going to go somewhere 55, no later than this, really, going to Detroit. And pairing him up with Malcolm Rodriguez is certainly a win. Okay, next screen, we get Byron Young going to the Jags, get him that third pass rusher, that Kayvon Chason replacement. Love that. Pairing him up with Trayvon Walker, who has inside-out versatility, and then really Josh Allen on the outside. Like that a ton. We'll see if they end up paying Josh Allen. Edge could continue to be something they address. DJ Turner then goes to the Giants. 4.26 speed. He's going to go relatively early. Wish we could have seen that 3-cone because people were hyping it up like it was going to be the best time, and 4.26 was the best time running the 40 at the cornerback position. So I understand if he pushed that time, he's like, yeah, never mind, I'm not going to do the 3-cone. So at his pro day though, I'm looking forward to that. Certainly an area of need for the Giants, trying to prioritize that cornerback position. It's a huge part of what Wink Martindale needs to run for his defense. So getting a guy here at 57 makes a lot of sense. Then Cedric Tillman to the Cowboys, adding some sides. We went tight end in the first round, kind of similar to what the Chargers basically had happen here in Goathouse's mock. You go tight end, then wide receiver in the second. So could see it play out that way. Adding that possession type goes a long way to boosting that type of that offense in general. And plus, I'd love to keep CeeDee Lamb in the slot 67% of the time. Drafting a Cedric Tillman gives you a guy who plays on the outside, so it makes it that much easier to keep Lamb inside. Then Jonathan Mingo, big-time winner from the Combine, 6'2", mid-4.4 speed, 220 pounds. This is a wide receiver class that is not, full of these 6'1", 6'2 guys. Like maybe it is a corner, right? But nonetheless, when you do get those guys, the Michael Wilsons, the Cedric Tillmans, the Rashee Rice, the Jonathan Mingos, they're going to go higher because there is kind of a scarcity of them. So getting him on this offense to be that possession type in addition to Stephon Diggs, someone else who can work that intermediate parts of the field, I'm excited about it. But he also has the long speed to kind of pair up with Gabe Davis and stretch the field. So kind of feels like he could be a good blend between what makes Diggs so scary, what makes Gabe Davis so scary, and kind of add one more weapon into an already really potent offense. Then Emmanuel Forbes goes to the Bengals. Yeah, interesting. Forbes is just tricky just because I don't know what to do with 166 pounds. But he has good ball production. 3-year starter at Mississippi State, which has kind of become like a pseudo DBU in a lot of ways with Cam Dantzler and some other guys that have come out over the last couple of years. So don't hate this value here at 60. First round, I'm a little skeptical of it. McShay had him going to the Steelers at 17. And I'm like, I don't know about that because he's so light. But here at 60, I think you can make it work, and Bengals certainly could use another corner in that position room. Then we get Derek Hall. You'd be pairing up a couple different speed rushers, Hall with Brian Burns. I'd rather see them add someone who's a little bit heavier, maybe stops the run at a higher level. But nonetheless, adding a running mate, if you will, with Brian Burns, finding that second pass rusher, I love it. And it's something that I've done a ton of times in mocks at 61 for Carolina. Zach Charbonnet, this is, Miles Sanders leaving a free agency contingency, Boston Scott being gone as well, adding that power and pairing him up with Kenneth Gainwell. Gainwell could be the scat back, the elusive type, and then, Zach Charbonnet runs that 4.53. I've been saying for a while he's going to run low 4.5s, and 4.53, I think, certainly classifies as that. He is not as, like LaShawn McCoy, he'll bounce back and forth, super agile, but he can plant his foot and make one cut, and that one cut is pretty good. Not going to get anything more than that, but that speed, power, and that one single cut you get out of Zach Charbonnet is pretty dangerous. And then Isaiah Foskey to round us out going to the Kansas City Chiefs. Love to see them address that defensive line and continue to try to make that a priority. And I think you get good value there at 63 for Foskey. Not a master of one thing, but pretty good at a lot of different areas, and that makes him pretty useful right away. But guys, that is going to do it for my reaction to the Goathouse's latest 2023 NFL mock draft. Let me know what you would grade it down below in the comment section. I'll give the Goathouse, he always does cool different things. I'll give him a 92. I like this draft a fair amount. And of course, 2 rounds. Give you credit for going the extra round as well. So let me know what you would grade Goathouse's latest mock, whether it's a letter grade or number grade. Love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. But also, be sure to tell me who your favorite team is and if you would be excited about the haul that the Goathouse gave you in this mock draft. Like if you guys enjoyed, subscribe if you guys are new, and until next time, my name is Teej, and I'm signing off.